Hi, this is Ryan with Mike and Technologies, back for another DocuWare video. Today's video is going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to look at building out a file cabinet in DocuWare. I am using DocuWare version 7.12, but this will apply in other versions as well. So building out a file cabinet is essential. In DocuWare, it's like basically the first step if you plan on doing any importing, storing. Obviously, these documents and files need to end up somewhere. So we build out a file cabinet and then we can store our documents directly into that cabinet. So the first thing I want to do is obviously log into DocuWare. This is DocuWare Cloud. And today we're going to walk through building out an accounting file cabinet. So typically what happens with the accounting cabinets is I will take sample invoices from the client. So for example, let's look at one of these invoices here. This is going to tell me what I want to capture. So, for example, we want to capture the date, the invoice number, the vendor name. Let's also grab the PO number, salesperson, the due date, and then we'll grab the total of the invoice as well. So we want to identify which index values we want to essentially index off of these documents. So if we hop back over to DocuWare, we log into DocuWare, this is what we see. One thing I want to mention before we build out the cabinet, the cabinet's going to exist under the username that the cabinet is created under. So I would suggest creating the cabinet under the admin account. That way you always know where to find it. If you develop the cabinet under a user account, unless that user grants ownership rights to another user, only that user account can modify that cabinet. So that is something we want to keep in mind. So the first thing we want to do, we log into DocuWare and we want to jump down to our configurations panel. And then we head over to file cabinets. So this is going to give you a list of all your file cabinets, and this is a good example here of a file cabinet that was created with another user account. This is what it looks like. It's going to be grayed out, and you're just not going to be able to click and edit the cabinet at all until the user who created this cabinet grants my user account ownership rights to the cabinet. So definitely develop those under the admin account if you can. So the first thing we want to do is create a new cabinet. So we want to click on New File Cabinet at the top. And it's going to bring up this dialog box. So here we can put in the name of our cabinet. So for this, we're going to do, let's just call it Accounting New. I have a few other accounting cabinets here. And then we can give our cabinet a description if you want. And then under that, we can give the cabinet a color. So let's go ahead and give it yellow. I would suggest keeping full text search checked. We can go over full text in a bit, but full text is going to allow you to do a complete OCR search on your document. So you're going to be able to search for terms on the document that aren't being indexed into fields, if that makes any sense. And then you have other languages as well. So if you're outside of an English-speaking zone, you can use East Asian languages or others as well. So looks like this is East Asian languages and all other languages. So you have those two options down there. And then we're going to hop over to database fields. So by default, DocuWare is going to give you a list of suggested fields basically for the cabinet. What I like to do typically, unless I'm using any of these, I just kind of get rid of all these and then I start from scratch. That way I have complete control. It is going to require at least one field listed here in order for you to continue through the setup. So I'm going to leave document type at the top there because I know I will be using document type. A few of those others I would probably also be using, but I like to start clean for this demo. So let's just use document type and then we'll go to next. And here's our permissions tab. So the cabinet is being created under my user account. You can see here I am the owner of this cabinet. If I wanted to add other users to this, I could select either a role or I can select the user directly. And then once you add another user to the cabinet, they're going to have read rights by default. You can give them edit rights. That's going to allow the user to make any edits to the index values. And then you can also grant delete rights to the user as well. This is going to allow the user to delete documents from the cabinet. I definitely don't suggest giving delete rights to users unless absolutely needed. And then you can also give them ownership rights. So this is going to allow this user here, Greg, it's going to allow him ownership of the cabinet. So he's going to be able to jump into that cabinet on the back end, make any edits to the fields, and read and edit documents in the cabinet as well. So once we have this setup here done, we click on Finish, and DocuWare is going to build out our cabinet for us. So you can see here we have accounting new. That's created for us, only one index field, 3 dialogs. So let's hop into this cabinet and check it out. So we want to click on the pencil tool here. We're going to edit this cabinet. So the first thing we see here is a general tab. It's going to allow us to change the color if we want, or unselect full text search. We can also turn on what's called version management. So this is going to allow you to create multiple versions of a document. So for example, if you have a Word document in your file cabinet and you make any changes to that Word document after you check it out of DocuWare and you store it back into DocuWare, DocuWare is going to mark it as version 2. And you could also jump back to version 1 as well. So DocuWare's going to keep track of every version of that document after each change is made to it. So you can check version management and then also check automatically create new versions. That's going to allow DocuWare to create those additional versions of the document. And then under more options here, we have full text options, so English, OCR template, and then we also have security. So by default, it's going to encrypt the documents. You can't really change that. Application allowed and approved by user, check integrity of documents with a checksum. I honestly have never really messed with either of these, but you may get by with, or you may have, I don't know, something set up on your end where you need to utilize either of these. And then under that, we have administrative information. So this is going to be the GUI ID of the cabinet. So this is going to come in handy if, for example, you're setting up any sort of API process. And then it's going to show you the name of the database table and the database connection, and then the storage location as well. So if you're an admin of your system, this information is going to come in handy if you ever need it. So we're going to jump back up here and then move on to the next tab. So we have database fields. Let's go ahead and save our changes here. So this is where we build out our cabinet. So you can see here we have a document type field and a full text field already set up for us. Let's go ahead and add some more. So if I look at my invoice here, we want to obviously grab the date, so let's go ahead and set that up. We'll call this date. Actually, you know what? Let's call this invoice date. And this is going to be a date field. So you can see here my drop down, I have different field types I can choose. So for date, I'm going to choose date. And then we're going to put in our vendor. We're going to leave that as a text field. You can also modify the length of the field as well. Just keep in mind, once you set the length of a field while you're creating a cabinet, once that cabinet is created and you save it, DocuWare is going to lock in that text length for that field. So it's going to be a pain later on if you need to go back and, for example, I had a field that was only 10 digits long. Eventually, at some point, I had to go back and expand it to 15. What I ended up having to do was create another field, run an auto index job on the back end to transfer everything that was already in the cabinet to this new field, remove that old field. So it's set in stone. So I typically just keep it at 255. That way I don't have to go back later and basically make any changes. So we have our vendor. We want our document type, which is on there. Invoice number, let's go ahead and put that on there. We'll leave that as a text field. And let's go ahead and put the salesperson. We'll also leave that as a text field. And we want our PO number. And let's do due date. This is going to be a date field. And then the last one we'll grab is our total. So we'll do invoice total. Alright, so those are the fields we want. I'll go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to move over to dialogs. So this is going to show you the result list, the search dialog, and the store dialog. So keep in mind that these are three separate dialogs in DocuWare, and this is what DocuWare is referring to. So if I pull up, let's pull up my 2025 accounting cabinet. So this here under search, you can see I went down to 2025 cabinet. This is called a search dialog. This is going to allow me to do a search in my cabinet, so I can do a search for anything with invoice, then pull up my invoices. And this here is called a result list. So we have different dialogues here. This is a search dialog. This is what I input my values into to perform a search. Once I hit search at the top there, it's going to bring back my result list. And if I were to store a document, for example, so let's bring in an invoice, a sample invoice here. So you can see here, intelligent indexing ran on the document, and now I can store this into my 2025 accounting cabinet. This is the store dialog. So this is the dialog that comes up that allows me to input my field values when I store the document into my cabinet. So you can see there I hit store, it's going to remove itself from the tray. So now that document is in my file cabinet. The old cabinet, not the one we're currently creating. I just wanted to show you what a result list looked like, a search dialog, and a store dialog, just so you get a visual representation of what this is. So you can also click into each one here. So this is going to allow me to hide certain fields from that dialog, and I can also take these fields and move them within the list here of my fields. So, for example, if I want vendor to be the third field that shows up on my result list, I can click and drag that into the third position there, or drag it back down. And then we have our index dialog. This is the tab next to results. So what this is, so let me show you what an index value or index dialog is. So if I go back here and I do a search, here's my result list here. This is a result of my search term. I just did a search for invoice. It's going to bring me my result list. If I right click on this document up at the top here and I go to edit index entries, this here is the index. Oops, sorry. This here is the index dialog. So if I go back here, you can see the index dialog. You have a list of your fields. That is going to be this here. So I'm going to basically be, or I'm allowed at this point to edit any fields or any values in the fields in my cabinet. And then I would just hit save. So for example, if this contract number was wrong, I could right click that document, click on edit index entries, and let's say the contract number was 300. Hit save. You can see there updated that field to 300. This, what I just added here, was my index dialog. So typically I always match these up, so my results and index dialogs are always going to be the same, just so I don't, you want to avoid as much confusion with your users as possible. So I like to keep everything exactly the same. Same with search and store dialogs. So this is my search dialog. Same thing with result. I can modify any of these fields by moving them. I can also change the label of the field itself. So if this needs to be called vendor name, you could change the label and the way it shows up in your cabinet. You can also make these read-only fields. So that's what this is here. This is a read-only checkbox. So if I want invoice number or invoice total, any of these to be read-only, I can check that box. That means that the users who are using DocuWare are not going to be able to edit the values in that field. And then on the right here we have required. So you can also make these required fields. So this means that in order to perform a search using this dialog here, invoice date and vendor are required fields before I can actually bring up a result. So yeah, keep in mind read-only and read-only and requirements. You have those two options available to you. And if I scroll down here, you can see some what I call system fields. So for example, like the file type, the document size, the document ID, the user was stored by, when it was modified, who it was modified by, anything like that, you can also enable on the cabinet itself. And then same thing with the store dialog, so we can change any of the order that these fields appear in. We can make these read only or required. And then we can also turn on intelligent indexing, so that's going to be the like the AI tool that is going to automatically pre-populate fields. So if you're using intelligent indexing on your trays and you want to use it on your cabinet, definitely want to check that box and then configure your fields for intelligent indexing. So I'm going to make a separate video on this because it's a whole other thing here. But that's where you would enable that feature on your dialog. Your store dialog, check that box next to intelligent indexing, and then configure your fields. And then we have more options down here, which I don't really mess with. So this is like a web service, and then we have an ID for this dialog here. So again, this could come in handy if you're, for example, setting up any sort of like API process. And you can also create additional dialogues as well. So a good example of this would be, let's say you have an HR department, and maybe you're collecting social security numbers of your employees, and you're granting the HR department access to that file cabinet. If your users do not need to see the social security numbers, what you could do is create an additional like result dialog that hides that field specifically. So what I could do here is create another result list and then simply go through and hide. So let's make believe this is a social security number field here. I could click on this eye icon on the far right and simply just hide that field from this dialog. So what this means is, you can have one cabinet that's existing in your company, grant multiple users to this cabinet, but you can then drill down even further and only allow specific users to see specific fields in that cabinet. And then what you would do if you make that additional list, that additional dialog, is you jump over to users, and then you assign your users or roles to that list. So what I would recommend doing is creating another role. So again, going back to the HR example here, you could create a couple different HR roles and then add the users to those roles and then assign that role to that list. A lot cleaner that way. That way you don't have to assign individual users to it. And for example, if a user leaves the company, you could just remove them from that role itself, and then that removes that user from anything that they were assigned to. And you can also create additional store dialogs, search dialogs. And this tab here all is going to show you every dialog for this specific cabinet. But you can also drill this down, so you can only see search dialogs, store, and results. And then we also have lists. So this is something else that I will go over in another video, but this is going to be like a task list. So for example, if I want to create like an ad hoc workflow environment, so I'll show you what that looks like here. So this is my old 2025 accounting cabinet here. I had an ad hoc workflow set up, so anytime a document was approved, it's going to show up on an approved list with the user that approved it with a stamp. These lists here get created at the file cabinet level. So for example, if I was going to create an approved task list for my users, I could create a new list, call that approved, and then you're going to have to set some rules. So what this is going to do, you know what, I need to add a status field first. This is a good example here. So let's go back to database fields. Let's add status. This will be for our ad hoc workflow. So the status, for example, anytime a document comes into the system, I can set the status as new. So we know that this is a new invoice that needs to be approved, rejected, etc. So if I jump back over to dialogs and I go to lists, let's create this approved list now. Call it approved. I jump down here to create my rule. So this is going to be a status, and it's equal to approved. So this is telling DocuWare anytime an invoice or document in this cabinet here has a status of approved, put it on this list here. And then just like those other lists, the search, dialog, the result, you can also modify the list of the fields here. And we also have an index dialog as well. So I like to match these two, but this is where you would modify that for this specific list here. So I'd hit OK. And then from here I can add users, roles to this list here. So I can add, for example, a role called accounting approvers. Maybe that accounting approvers role has 5 users in it. I could then add that role to this accounting, this list here, this approved list. So that role would see anything that comes through as approved. And you could do the same for rejected, for example. So anytime any document is rejected, I could then set a status of rejected, like that. And then let's say I had another role or user that needed to be on that list, so then I could add them to this as well. And on the far right here we have permissions. So this is what I went over earlier. So I added myself. Obviously I'm the owner of this cabinet because I created it. And I added another user to the cabinet as well. I marked them as the owner. That gives them complete control over this cabinet. So if they need to edit this as well, they can jump in there and do that. You also have advanced permissions, so this is going to allow you to set who has delete rights, who has edit rights, owner rights. It's a bit more granular, so I can jump over here and add users that way. And that's just a toggle up here, so I can toggle that off, see my list of users. So I could add, for example, I could add a role to this cabinet as well, like an accounting role, and then mark their rights as well. So once that's done, you hit save. Then if we go back out, you can see there's our accounting new cabinet there. It's got our 9 fields, our 6 dialogs, and if you ever need to jump back in and edit the cabinet, you can just simply click on the pencil tool and then come back in, add or remove fields from the cabinet, edit your dialogs, or edit your permissions. You can export a cabinet, so if you want to import a cabinet from another system, you could export a cabinet from this button here. So it's going to export this cabinet out as a JSON file, or an XML file, excuse me. And then what you could do is take that file and import it back into the system. So you'd click on this tool at the top and import that file into your DocuWare system. So that way you don't have to go through and recreate fields or recreate a file cabinet from scratch. And then you have a filter tool at the top. So if you have a list of file cabinets, you can do a search for that cabinet. So that's the real simple version of how to create a new cabinet. I do have a video set up for setting up import jobs, so I would suggest checking that one out next. That's going to go over how to create templates in the back end of DocuWare to scrape data off of invoices and import those directly into our cabinet as fully indexed documents. But that's what I got for you today, and I appreciate you checking it out. Let us know if you ever have any questions or if you want to reach out and talk to us about your DocuWare needs. Feel free to. Thanks.